Well, good morning, everyone. It's so good to be here this morning. I have a word to share with you that I hope will be an encouragement and something that will help us grow and something that will help us be successful in our walk with the Lord. I'm touching on a very important subject today, and a subject that comes from Matthew, the 6th chapter. So I just want to, as we continue in this series on taking Jesus seriously, I want to talk about our prayer, the believer's prayer. And I, you may be excited to know I've been working on a 23-minute sermon. The bad news is I haven't really developed it yet. Working on it. Let's go directly to Matthew, the 6th chapter, verse 1 through 8. Be careful not to practice your righteousness in front of others to be seen. Everybody say seen. Seen by them. If you do, you have no reward from your Father in heaven. So when you give to the needy, do not announce it with trumpets, as the hypocrites do in the synagogues and on the streets, to be honored by them. Truly I tell you that they have received their reward in full. But when you give to the needy, do not let your left hand know what your right hand is doing, so that your giving may be in secret. And then your Father, who sees what's done in secret, will reward you. And one translation says, reward you openly. Verse 5, and when you pray, do not be like the hypocrites, for they love to pray standing in the synagogues and on the street corners to be seen by others. Truly, I tell you, they've received their reward in full. But when you pray, go into your room, close the door, pray to your Father who is unseen. Then your Father, who sees what is done in secret, will reward you. And when you pray, do not keep babbling like pagans, for they think that they will be heard because of many words. Do not be like them, for your Father knows what you need before you ask him. Lord, your word is powerful and it's great. Father, I thank you for your word. We have nothing to say today but your word. We have nothing to preach but your word. And you gave us your word, and you said to us in your word to preach this word, so we do so today. I pray that I'll have the words to say, and I pray that we'll have the ears to hear. And Lord, we want more than anything else to reach beyond the realm of just the natural here and just open our ears that we may hear supernaturally what you're speaking to us today. We give you the praise for it in Jesus' name. Everybody said amen. Well, I was reading an article not too long ago about India. India has established 16 no-selfie places in the country because people, it's like at old castles and rivers and bridges and stuff like that. And they've established these so that nobody can take a selfie there because so many people have died taking selfies of themselves. And I've been to India. It's interesting because we think of that India, as being an impoverished nation. However, there is a growing middle class, and even the lower class people all have cell phones. Everybody has a cell phone. I don't care if you have food or no food, everybody's got a cell phone. And a couple of years ago, I was driving up to Darjeeling, went with Brent Napton, who, by the way, is in South Africa today, and let's be praying for him as he makes his way home as a ministry in India. And but they are meeting in South Africa right now, so we continue to pray for Brent. But we were there, and we were winding our way up to this place called Darjeeling in North India. You've seen the Darjeeling tea. That's where that all comes from. They have these, and Darjeeling is a city that is built on the side of a mountain. It's just amazing, but it takes hours to get up there, and this winding road. And they put me in the front seat. Told me, since I was the tallest, and I don't know what they did with Brent. I guess they put him in the back and gave him 2 seats back there. But they put me there. I think they said out of honor, and you're the tallest. I think they wanted to scare the heebie-jeebies out of me. That's why. Because there is not a race car driver in America that can do what Indian drivers do. So they put me in the front seat. First thing, I'm on the wrong side of the seat. So all of those cliffs are over there because we're driving on the wrong side of the road, actually left side. It's the right side for them. But what's amazing is the number of motorbikes, and they come zipping by and in, and there are no rules. The rule is you just get there first, and you speed up, and you get ahead of everybody else. So they're coming by. This is no joke. I saw, as we got into the city, this guy, and he had 4 people on this little motorbike. They're all little, but still there's 4 of them on it. And he's driving, and he's got his cell phone up here. And he's doing this. He's taking a selfie while he's driving. They're all grinning like mules eating briars, just grinning and smiling and everything. And I thought, wow, I've seen it all now. I wish I had a picture. I wish I could have taken a selfie of that selfie. That was, it was amazing. Well, we live in a time where people crave attention. And there's really a reason why. There's an American journalist who asked the question, have we become a narcissistic country? And I think we have, and I think the obvious answer to that is yes. And has the world become narcissistic? And I think more and more so, since we have the opportunity for social media and so forth. But the occupation of self, it is something that we need to understand. It's born out of an inert desire that we have to be noticed, because we all want to matter. And actually, God created us with this desire to matter, to make a difference. But our celebrity-saturated culture leads us to believe that we only matter if we are noticed. And people are searching for affirmation. They want somebody to say, you really count. You really matter. Wow, look at you. Boy, you've done it. You've succeeded. We have an inner craving for that. But if you stop and hear Jesus, if you read his word and listen to his spirit, he will let you understand that craving, that innate need that we have for attention is satisfied. The answers are found in his word, and the answers are found in our relationship with him. So he's teaching here. He said, hypocrites do not pray to be heard by God. We throw out the term hypocrite. It was used differently at that time. It wasn't a slang word at that time. It was just simply people who were putting on an act. That's what the Greek means, is putting on an act. But he said they are praying to be heard by, not to be heard by God, but to be seen by people. So they perform these religious acts in order to be noticed. Now, in this chapter, chapter 6, the Lord's Prayer is here in the middle of this chapter. The verses that I have read, verse 1 through 8, are right up here, where he is talking about motive and intent. And then if you go beyond the Lord's Prayer, you also, and we're not going to get into that today because that's for next week's message, I believe, but that is another thing about being seen. So sandwiched between the Lord's Prayer, the what, is the why and the why. So you've got this bread, piece of bread up here, or a piece of bread, I'll put it down here, that says, watch your motives and your intent when you pray. And then the meat is the prayer. And then sandwiched above that is another instruction about motive and intent and why we do what we do. So I want to go to the Lord's Prayer, and it's in the verse 9, and you all know this well. As a matter of fact, why don't we do this? Let's just read this together. This then is how you should pray. Let's pray it together. Our Father in heaven, I can't hear you. Our Father, your kingdom come, your will be done on earth as it is in heaven. Give us this day our daily bread, and forgive us our debts as we also have forgiven our debtors. And lead us not into temptation, but deliver us from the evil one. We'll just stop there. He goes on to say, for if you forgive other people when they sin against you, your heavenly Father will also forgive you. But if you do not forgive others their sins, your Father will not forgive you. A couple of seconds, I just want to deal with that. Have you ever noticed that in the Lord's Prayer, it is not about I and me, it's about us and we. Give us this day our daily bread. It is a corporate prayer. It's a prayer that connects us with a community of believers around the world. And there's so much about the Lord's Prayer, and Pastor Kenneth has got a teaching on this that every now and then he has given that is absolutely wonderful. But I want to touch on some of the things that he talks about. The first one is this. When he says, our Father who is in heaven, hallowed or holy be your name. And my point here is that prayer is both intimate and it is reverent. It's intimate. God says to his creation, I love you, you are my creation, and I invite you, he invites us to refer to him as Father. Romans, the 8th chapter, the 15th verse says, the Spirit you received does not make you slaves so that you live in fear again. Rather, the Spirit you received brought about your adoption to sonship. And by him we cry, what? Abba, Father. Galatians 4:6, because we are his children, God has sent his Spirit, or the Spirit of his Son, into our hearts, prompting us to call out, Abba, Father. And when Jesus was here, when he prayed, Abba, Father. And so what an invitation. That word, Abba, it's an Aramaic word which means father, but it was a common term that was used to denote affection and confidence and trust. And it was used here to signify that close, intimate relationship of a father to his child. Childlike trust the young child puts in his daddy. Probably if we were going to translate that modern vernacular, it would not be Abba, Father, it would be Daddy, Father. Daddy, Father. I lost my father when I was 20 years old, 2 months after we married. And the loss was great. I didn't realize how terrible that loss would be. I would find myself at times just sitting up in bed in the nighttime, weeping and thinking, I really wish Dad was here. I wish he could see me now. I wish he was around. Some of you lost your parents. You lost your mother. You lost your father maybe at an early age. And you know that pain and you know that hurt. As a matter of fact, some of you just recently have lost parents in their old age. And no matter what age you are when you lose, there's a vacancy there. I remember going to a conference one time. This is a few years later when we were pastoring a church in Salt Lake City that we planted. And we went to Atlanta, Georgia for a conference. And the host pastor came out on the platform. And I'll never forget when he came out, I just kind of did the numbers. I was 32, he was 55, and I thought to myself, I'm young enough and he's old enough that I could be his son, he could be my father. And have you ever had something rise up within you and you don't try to make it happen, it just comes to you. And all of a sudden there's this pain that just, boom, this pain came out of my being. And I thought to myself, didn't say it aloud, but I thought to myself as I watched, as I almost idolized this person who was well esteemed and well known, a great preacher and a great pastor. I thought, I wish I had a father like that. I looked at all the other young men that were around. He was their mentor, and I thought, I wish I had a father like that. Almost immediately, the Holy Spirit spoke something to me that I will never forget. And God said to me, I will be your father. I will be your father. And he said, if you leave, your home and go out, I'll give you many homes, give you many fathers, give you many mothers. And over the years, he has done that. I've been blessed by mentors who cared about me like a father many times. But God is our Father, and I'm grateful for that. And maybe some of you have experienced loss, and I'm just going to tell you today that God will be your Father, that he will make up the lacking. He is able to do that. He says we can call him Abba Father, our Father. And that is the intimacy. And then there is the transcendency of this prayer. In heaven, our Father that he is here, but he is removed from us from the standpoint that he is in heaven. He's in the realm of the unseen. Hallowed or holy be your name. That word holy means set apart. So while there's intimacy, there's also major reverence for him. Hallowed be your name. So what we can't forget that our intimacy with him, it does not supplant the reverence and worship. He is near, yet he is transcendent. We don't take him for granted. And then he says, your kingdom come, your will be done on earth as it is in heaven. This is a prayer that impacts our world. This is the kind of prayer that your kingdom come, your will be done. We talk a lot about the kingdom of God here. I think this is probably one of the most difficult statements that we have in this prayer, of understanding that God has called us to bring something of heaven and to touch earth. It was Oliver Wendell Holmes who coined the quote, and we use this a lot. Some people are so heavenly minded that they are no earthly good. And as cliche-ish as that may seem, it probably is the truth. I grew up in church where all the songs that we sang were about heaven and getting there. This world is not my home, I'm just a passing through. My treasure's laid up somewhere beyond the blue. Is that how it went? Something. And I forget the rest of it, and that is all true. But that's all we sang about, because it was kind of like the reason why we got saved is to get us to heaven. But Jesus taught us this. Don't pray just to escape the world and get to heaven, to escape earth and get to heaven. Pray that heaven will touch earth. You are here to be my vessels, my representatives. You are here to be my ambassador that connects the dots. And when we do connect the dots, we begin to see that your success in your business, education, family, and community, all of that contributes to the fact that we're having an impact upon our world. Then he goes on. He says, give us this day our daily bread. I call this the prayer for the power of contentment. And believe me, it is a power, because it's something that we cannot contrive ourselves. That thing we call contentment. Whether you take the bread literally or figuratively here to refer to everything that we need to sustain life, Jesus leads us to pray for what is needed today. And when we do that, we deny ourselves this worldly tendency to accumulate and to hoard, to hang on to stuff. 2 years ago, the word went out that there was a shortage of toilet paper. Remember that? Now, please don't be offended if you went out and bought boxes and boxes and boxes and boxes of it, okay? So I feel your pain. But it was just interesting. All you have to do is say shortage, and people want to accumulate and get stuff and hoard it and put it together. And Jesus taught us to pray this way. And there's more that he says about this in this sermon, and in the whole thing in the Lord's the Sermon on the Mount. There's much more that he has to say about being content with what we have now. But still, it's an important thing for us to remember that we don't have to worry about tomorrow. We don't have to worry about the future. That doesn't mean that we do not plan, that we do not prepare, but we do not fret over what is going to happen in the future. Philippians, the 4th chapter. Here's the Apostle Paul. He says, I know what it is to be in need. I think all of us can relate. I look around here, and I would imagine all of us can relate to this. And I know what it is like to have plenty. Somebody said, I've been up, I've been down. I like up. So Paul said, I know what it is to be in need. I know what it is to have plenty. I have learned the secret of being content in any and every situation, whether well-fed or hungry, whether living in plenty or living in want. I can do all this through him who gives me this strength. I think that there is just this incomparable, you cannot compare it. There is this major joy that we experience when we know that God has made provision. You know, when you don't have anything and then all of a sudden you've got it. And it wasn't about anything that you could do yourself. It was just we lived for a few years when our two oldest children, we didn't have our youngest yet, but we lived in what we call the bungalow. It was a house next door to a church building that we had purchased in Salt Lake City. And we just didn't have any money. We're poor. I mean, we never acted poor. We never looked poor. But if you look on the charts, you know, if you look on the national charts, we is poor. So I said, how poor were you? We were so poor that our church mice, we were poor as church mice, and our church mice left our church and went to another church. That's how poor we were. We just had nothing, and not very much. We had a few things. And one day, never forget, I don't remember the meals that we ate there, but I remember this meal distinctly in that bungalow. And when I say bungalow, that's a style of house that's got a porch in the front. It's a brick porch in the front. And actually a cute little house, which is still standing right now. Somebody moved in there and made it all look nice. But I'll never forget when our Mormon neighbors one day brought a bunch of vegetables from their garden. Delia made that meal for our family. I'll never forget it because it was a holy meal. And it was holy because it was something that God had provided. That's why I remember that meal. I remember exactly where I was sitting. Remember exactly where Delia was sitting, where David was sitting, where Juliet was sitting, as we ate those tomatoes and cucumbers and whatever else was in that batch of vegetables. What an incomparable joy in knowing, God, you have made provision. So nowadays, it's not a few tomatoes and vegetables. It's much bigger. So our prayers are bigger. You know, God sends you out to pray bigger prayers. And let me just say this. When something happens where you feel like this had to be an answer to prayer, I'm going to encourage you to connect the dots. Because somewhere back there, you prayed for that. And God answered your prayer. And then he goes on to say this, forgive us our debts as we have also forgiven our debtors. This is a prayer for freedom from indebtedness. I'm coming back to this one because Jesus has some more to say about forgiveness. He elaborates on this at the end of this prayer. So let's go to this other one. And here's something that has where he says, lead us not into temptation, but deliver us from evil. This is a prayer for protection from bad stuff happening, and for us getting involved in bad stuff. Deliver us from evil. Deliver us from sin. Deliver us from stuff that is wrong. I think a better translation is, let us not enter into temptation. We're not just praying for deliverance from the effects of sin, but we are praying to be guarded from the primal cause of sin, which is temptation. The Bible says that we are tempted when we're drawn away by our own desires. And Jesus teaches us to ask for the power to nip this thing in the bud. Now, this is something that I think may help us today. If you feel like you keep tripping up, then let's just back up. And this thing you keep tripping into, let's back up for a moment and let's pray a different kind of prayer. Lord, I not only don't want to sin, I don't even want the temptation. Would you deliver me from temptation? Would you protect me from temptation? Would you change my heart so I'm not even tempted to do this? And there is a kind of prayer that you can pray, a concentrated and a consecrated prayer, I believe, where God comes in, does a supernatural thing, and literally changes your heart about something. Maybe you're greedy about something. Maybe every time your neighbor gets a new car, you want one just like it. You find yourself lusting after stuff like that. God, would you just change my heart so that I can rejoice with other people and not feel like that I need the same thing? Lord, deliver me from temptation. Deliver me from temptation. So sin occurs when we're drawn away and tempted by our own desires, but he teaches us to ask for the power to nip that sin in the bud, not even to entertain. Change my heart, O Lord. That's that prayer. Change my heart, Lord. And then he comes to this matter of forgiveness again. Verse 14. He has already said, forgive us our debts so that we, as we have also forgiven our debtors. And then he comes to 14. And this is probably, this is the end, but this is the crux of my message to you today. For if you forgive other people when they sin against you, your heavenly Father will also forgive you. It's interesting that the only point out of these 5 points of the Lord's Prayer, the only point that he comes back to elaborate on, is this thing of forgiveness. And it leads us to believe that the prayer that we pray is going to be effective only if we deal with this thing of forgiveness. And we've got to deal with this thing. He elaborates on it. We have to deal with it because the words that Jesus speaks here are very strong. They hit us where we are. Now, some people have read this. If you don't forgive, you will go to hell because God doesn't forgive you, and if you're not forgiven, you're going to go to hell. I don't know where we ever got that kind of theology. It's so sad. Because if we went to hell because we sinned, the word sin means to miss the mark, okay? If any of us went to hell because we sinned today, we would all be burnt spots on the carpet today. We're just out of here. But the fact is that the only sin that we are condemned by is the sin of unbelief, that we do not embrace and have faith in the Son of God who paid for our sins. So what does he mean then by this thing when he says that if you forgive others, then your heavenly Father will forgive you? Let me explain it to you this way. When an offense is incurred or created, when it is made, when an offense is created, there is a debt that is incurred. So this debt over here, somebody's got to pay for it. So I had sinned all of my life, but when I came to Jesus, I accepted the fact that he had forgiven me of my debts and my sin. And it was his price, the price that he paid on Calvary. Now, Jesus comes and says in the same way, when people are indebted to you, when they have offended you, they said bad things about it, did something wrong to you, and you forgive them, you release them from the debt, but you also release yourself to freedom. Because the minute that I release the debt, you don't owe me anything anymore. I know you called me a booger, but you don't owe me anything anymore. I forgive you. And so what happens? I get under the spout where the glory comes out. I open up the door for God's blessing. Forgiveness means the abundance of God's blessing and favor upon my life. That's what forgiveness is. And when I release others, I actually release the blessing of God upon them. That's why Jesus said, pray last week? Pray for your enemies. I didn't mean to point over to Tim and Claudia while I was there. Pray for your enemies. The reason why he says that, pray for your enemies, you're going to release them. And guess what? You release them into the hands of the Lord. And the Lord will take care of them. Let me just share with you real quickly 3 things that happen when we forgive. When you forgive, and we're going to do this in a moment because some of us, we have some people that we need to forgive. Some of us may have a list. You will not necessarily feel better. That's the first thing, because forgiveness is not a feeling thing, it is a faith thing. It's not based in the emotion, it's based in truth. When I say I forgive, at that moment, I may not, and you know what? I may come back to it again. I may say, I forgive again. A friend of mine a lot of years ago said, if you have to keep on telling your story, you haven't forgiven. And I said, ouch. Because I was singing that Somebody Done Me Wrong song, and I was repeating a story. And the reason why I repeated that story was so I would look better and they would look worse. And I wanted to prejudice the person I was talking to. I wanted to prejudice them against that person. I'm better than them because look what I did. It doesn't always, but Jesus says to us, forgive. And forgiveness is not an emotional thing, it's a truth thing. Number 2, forgiveness does not always guarantee restoration and restitution. A lot of years ago, I had a fellow pastor in the city that I pastored. His name was Jim. Jim became a good friend, but I just knew Jim distantly. I would see him at meetings or whatever. And then I would hear things about him, and I would entertain rumors about him. And then I heard that he said something about me, and then I said something about him because he said something about me. And then he said something about me because I said something about him because he had said something about me. So I called him one day. I said, Jim, can we have breakfast? So we sat down together and had breakfast. And I said, Jim, the reason I want to have breakfast is because I have entertained some gossip and rumors about you, and I'm not going to do that anymore, and I'm terribly sorry. Now, Jim was a retired Marine sergeant before he went into the ministry, and he still had some Marine sergeant in him, but boy, his bottom lip started trembling. And he said, Paul, no, I've been the one at wrong, because I have said some bad things about you. And I said, no, Jim, you don't understand. I have had bad feelings toward you. I have had aught against you. No, he said, I'm a first-class jerk. And so we went back and forth trying to out-humble each other. And finally, we agreed, okay, you're a jerk, I'm a jerk, all of God's people are jerks. And we developed a friendship, a strong friendship, a restored friendship. Doesn't always happen, you all. Doesn't always happen. Restoration may not come and restitution. Forgiveness does not necessarily mean that restitution will come. But when you forgive, if it's somebody that you were in a relationship, somebody that you were married to, if it's somebody who you worked for, if it's somebody in the past that has been a part of your life, and you forgive that person, let me tell you the number one thing that happens. You are set free. Unforgiveness keeps me in bondage. But when I forgive, it opens the windows of heaven over me. There is no more freedom than being under this umbrella of woe and a bondage that's the consequences of my unforgiveness and the heaviness and the weight of, you know what, I really need to do something about this and I really need to get back at them. There's just something about being able to step out of that and leave that behind. Again, leave that behind and say, Lord, I forgive. And I trust you. And I believe that your blessing is going to come my way. Here's what happens. God begins to answer prayers like you've never seen before. You are free to be blessed by him. I'm not going to ask for a show of hands this morning. I don't have to. Are y'all going to sing a song at the close here? Y'all can come on up. I don't have to because I know that there are some of us here who you know, it's the law of average. If you have a crowd this size, you can have some people. But I don't need to know. But there are some people in your life who have done you dirty. And you've done you wrong. And you are right. And they are wrong. But I want to introduce you to an amazing freedom that you can have as a believer in Jesus Christ. And that is a freedom of having all of this over your head and being delivered from it. For he says here, if you forgive other people when they sin against you, your heavenly Father will also forgive you. When God forgives, that means this, that he pours out his favor. That's what forgiveness is. It's the favor and the blessing of God. Let's pray together. Actually, would you just stand right now? Let's stand together. And would you bow your heads for a moment or just close your eyes and let's go into our secret place with the Lord right now. Lord, there are people in our lives, there are situations, even situations, events, incidents that we need to forgive. And we do so. We just say today, Lord, I forgive. I forgive. I forgive. I'm no longer going to argue over who is right or who is wrong. I just forgive. And I thank you for your forgiveness. I don't want to live. I don't want to walk from here through the rest of my life into glory, into heaven. I don't want this to be a miserable walk. I want this to be a walk of joy and abundance and blessing. So today, Lord, I forgive. I forgive in your name. I forgive in your name. I don't want to carry this load anymore. I want this load to be off my shoulders. I want to be able to smile. I want to be able to laugh. I want to be able to jump. I want to be able to holler. I want to be free in the name of Jesus. And I can do that. I can pay that price of forgiveness because you paid the price of forgiveness for me. And the more that I forgive, you keep filling me up. And the more I give out, you keep filling me up and filling me up. And so I receive it today. Just lift your hands, palms upraised to him. Holy Spirit, come and fill us, I pray. Fill us today. Fill us to overflowing. Lord, we do forgive, and we thank you for your forgiveness. We give you praise. We give you glory. We give you honor for it. And Lord, I pray right now for those under the sound of my voice, those who are with us, those who are joining us online this morning, no matter when they may see this or hear this message, I pray that today, Lord, today, those who do not know you will come to know you. And if that's you today, if God's speaking to you, just say to him, Lord, come into my life, come into my heart. Be my Lord. If you have strayed away from him, just say to him, Lord, I'm coming back to you. I'm coming back to you. I've made up my mind. I'm going to follow you. And I give you the praise for it. Lord Jesus, amen. Let's worship.